21st Sunday in Ordinary Time. Everyone remembers the old antiphons of Advent. O wisdom, O Adonai, O Emmanuel. They have been described as 7 ancient Christian prayers, sung or recited during the evening prayer from December 17th to 23rd, counting down the final days before Christmas Eve. Today we find the truth behind one of them, O Key of David. In the passage from Isaiah, we learn about the disgrace of Shebna, the master of the palace. Eliakim replaced him. To him is given the key of the house of David. In today's gospel reading, we discover the keys are given to Peter. And upon this rock I will build my church. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. So the fourth or antiphon is originally about Peter, not Jesus. I think the 8th century monks who composed the antiphons knew that, but poetic license has its uses. And the old antiphons are poetry at its finest. And we who are Catholics see in this passage the commissioning of the first pope, and that is the beginning of 2 journeys that strike me as celebrating the growth of the papacy. The first journey is from Galilee to Chicago, from Peter the Rock to Leo XIV. That is the trajectory that the papal role has taken to date. The selection of an American to the papacy is something I never expected to see in my lifetime. And to have him be a Midwestern from the state just across the river from us is even more mind-boggling. Last year, after his public statement, his speech was described as having the flat vowels of the Midwest dialect. That was when I found out about our dialect. To my mind, it was the same as the news anchors on the national TV networks. So now I learn it is a dialect. I am experiencing the papacy of Leo as entirely different from that of his predecessors. I grew up with Italian popes in a distant land and in a culture unconnected to my own. And before the World Wide Web, distance was truly distance. The Vatican was warded away in a different time and place. It was inspirational in the way that saints and legends are inspirational. Something to guide us, but not a part of the regular real world. It was a hope and ideal for our own world. There was a sense that, although we knew about the papacy, the Pope didn't know about us. Of course, that was not the case, but it did seem that way. That was the ideal world. Ours was the real world. 2 things the international perspective introduced by the Second Vatican Council turned our eyes outward beyond the Catholic world. The rise of the Internet erased the divisions between peoples that geography imposed upon us. During the council, the legendary theologian Karl Rahner was said to have observed where the church was heading. During the 1st century, Christianity got to Rome. Perhaps today it will move out to the rest of the world. That is a paraphrase. And so, following the council, we saw the papacy moving beyond Italy. John Paul II was Polish, and Benedict XVI was German. confirming the movie on the Italian apps. But then came Francis, a pope from the New World, from Argentina. The leap across the Atlantic Ocean was unheard of. After all, when Peter was God, no one knew there was a new world, a world beyond the Atlantic. This move was making Carl Reiner's observation something of a prediction. But Pope Leo is from Chicago. That seemed to be the culmination of the expansion out into the world. For me, it changed my sense of the paper role. It moved from the land of legend, so to speak, to historically reality, the reality of my own life and its familiar world. Leo was sad to do the daily world game as I do. He paid attention to what was happening in the US. Previous claims that the Pope didn't really know the reality of Americans' experience seem to say he doesn't really understand us. So we have room to ignore what he says. That disappeared. He was indisputably American as a former Chicagoan and current White Sox fan. A few days ago, on August 11th, he was honored at one of their games. They distributed 40,000 paper meter hats to attendees. A Dominican sister threw the first pitch. Instead of the seventh-inning stretch, they shared the sign of peace Leo watched on his TV. Now his views are regularly cited in the media. Facebook keeps close watch on developments. Pundits keep track of the contrasts between his views and those of our presidents. The journey from Galilee to Chicago has brought the Pope closer than I never would have suspected, and his views are taken seriously in our world. But that is the first journey I have been thinking about. The second is before that, namely Pope Leo's move after Robert Prevost from Chicago to the Vatican. More specifically, I am thinking about his coming bishop in Peru. I think of it as the journey from Chicago to Chiclayo, Peru. First of all, the two city names have an uncanny resemblance. I cannot think there is any other city name closer to Chicago than Chiclayo. It invites a comparison, and that allows us to recognize the differences between North and South American realities, as well as their similarities. In Peru, he worked with the conservative Opus Dei priests, as well as adopting synodality methods before its time, and he encountered the Latin American theology development. Emerging from the Second Vatican Council, liberation theology, and its foundation principle of the preferential option for the poor. And like Pope Francis, brought sensitivity of the poor and powerless to the papacy. In his time in Peru, he became a Peruvian, and it is said that he thinks of himself as much. If the papacy is a rock, like Peter was, it is not frozen in place. In today's world, Pope Leo has become an international moral authority, and he is often compared and contrasted with President Trump, who has not shied away from criticizing Leo. My sense is that far from being a relic of a former age, the papacy is as vital as ever. It is still a rock upon which the waters of contemporary values crash and retreat, ebb and flow, standing like a lighthouse on the shore. Thank you for listening.